All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Ermis Sfakiyanudis, the Executive Chairman of Uproar PR. And with me today, I'm very excited to have Mike Janke of Data Tribe. Mike's background has always been fascinating to me. He's a former member of Teal 6. He's a serial entrepreneur, having co-founded many companies. And the most recent and the one we'll be talking about today is Data Tribe, which is in the cybersecurity space. So, Mike, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ermis. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, I gave a little brief intro, but I always like hearing your background from you better. Could you just talk a little bit about how your military service and the various types of startups that you've worked with have led you to co-found Data Tribe?
Sure. I think I'll start off with context. I'm 52 years old. I'm a six-time CEO, and I don't have a college degree. So the first thing I always say is I'm not going to try to espouse Harvard MBA things to you, but more practical operations. I spent a lot of my formidable youth in the SEAL teams. I spent my last 8 years at SEAL Team 6. I left, went to work for the government for a little bit, and I wrote a book about something as simple as self-discipline. It had nothing to do with the SEAL teams, nothing to do with, special operations, but discipline as it comes to an individual. And I used that to start my first company, which was a defense firm right before 9/11, right? So you'll hear a theme that I talk about: timing is everything, right? It's
Right.
Starting a security company when there was a huge problem about outsourcing. Well, by 2007, I had grown it to over 8,300 employees, and we were doing over 500 million a year in revenue. Construction, logistics, roadways, buildings, security, aircraft. And fundamentally, in that time, what I learned is how much I didn't know. And I learned to abdicate myself and my ego and to have people around me that were way smarter than me in finance and law and organization. And fundamentally, I ended up getting a PhD in learning how not to do things. After that company sold, I got into tech, where I saw a problem wasn't being solved, and that was secure communication. When the age of BYOD and iPhones hit the market and people were Skyping. So I went into secure comms and then into cybersecurity and then into hardware. I've started a something completely different, which was a studio, a production company in Los Angeles, and I learned a lot through that. But it was about 5 years ago that one of my longtime friends, who used to be an investor of mine, Bob Ackerman. Bob is the founder of Silicon Valley's oldest and largest cyber security only venture firm on Sand Hill Road. And I hate to say it, but all the venture capitalists that have invested in my companies over the years were worthless. He was the one that was an engineer, that was a founder before, and we had this shared thesis that in cyber and data science, and this was probably 2013, 2014, that the largest innovations, the next major leaps were actually coming out of the classified offensive side. And that meant DC, Virginia, Maryland. It's where the highest concentration of trained cyber and data scientists are, with experience in nation state. So we knew it took a different approach than standard venture. And we knew it took a different approach than just angel investing and accelerators. So we built something very unique called Data Tribe, which is a hybrid of the way venture used to work 30, 35 years ago, where a bunch of operators got together after successfully exiting a few companies, put money in to an idea, moved them into the building, and literally embedded and spent, 2 years helping this company grow.
Right.
So we did the same thing. We we are structured as a company with an OpEx, an operational, and our investors are corporations and some of the most notable private individuals. And we only invest in 3 to 4 companies a year, but we look for things, and we'll see 300. And by the way, 32% of our deal flow comes from the Valley.
Oh, wow.
So it's interesting how things have changed since 2015 and 16. And what we'll do is we'll invest at we call it seed, $2 million. And 7 out of 10 of our companies are actually from the intelligence community that have found a breakthrough, a lot of times from the offensive side, and they realize, oh my God, the whole world's susceptible to this. Let's build a commercial version of it. So we focus almost entirely 100% on the commercial market.
So I'm sure a lot of your deal flow comes from your network. You and Bob Ackerman both have tremendous networks on both coasts. So what value does the third party endorsement, the earned media, the PR effort for these startup companies? Because uh, as we know, for a lot of these companies, investing in bringing a PR team to be a partner with them is a significant investment in the early stages. But what value do you see for them as they're out seeking funds?
So what I can tell you is PR and marketing is a science. It's not an art. It's not a light nice to have. It's a must have. And what I would tell you is networks only get you so far. They only get you your first couple home or customers. You may have a relationship with a reporter or somebody. That is very narrow. It runs out at a certain point. First, you have to start with the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are, if your company, your technology or offering is in a category where there are 27 well-funded, very large to very small, you are already setting yourself up to have tremendous headwinds. Cyber itself is very bifurcated in different segments. And in some ways, you're seeing consolidation happen. If you take a look at, intelligence reporting and intelligence feeds, there are 72. There were at one time, 72. So to start a new one and trying to compete, it's almost impossible no matter how much you spend. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is what we look for at Data Tribe is what we call over the horizon. There's either no technology like it, it's a new category, or it's so fundamentally different than the other problem solvers. You have the ability to create this green space of a different voice. I always tell entrepreneurs when it comes to PR and marketing that if your messages were 5% less filling, 10% less sugar than the other 15 companies in this space, it doesn't matter how much you spend. So strategy in the early days, where you can actually create your own category. We can say, no, we're not that. We're something entirely new, even if that's somewhat true.
Right.
So understanding the environment you're in is the first step to strategy. But having good PR and marketing is a must-have, not a nice-to-have. And how you approach it is also a different strategy.
Right. So what do you tell your companies? Because, as you know, I co-founded a cyber company myself, and the market is very loud, very noisy, very crowded. You go to these trade shows and you see booths everywhere with locks and zeros and ones all over, saying that they're the next best security, detection, remediation, whatever the case may be, company. So once you've identified a company that you believe has a differentiated offering. How do you help them break through this noise, and what role does PR uh, bring to that offering?
Well, it is a tool like anything else. If people have this notion that PR and awareness is all of a sudden magically going to drive sales, they're wrong.
Right.
There are two different types of what I'll say marketing and PR. There is strategic and tactical, two different things. Awareness is an important part of your go-to-market. If CISOs you're selling to, or somebody in the SOC, or the CIO or CTO that you're selling to, you know, they today do not want to take calls from salespeople. They don't. It's screened. Sometimes they will just try to follow Gartner's Magic Quadrant. So you have to find creative ways to get in front and get this messaging or awareness that this new product, this new category, this new type of company exists. And oftentimes, it's not through just ads and blobs and LinkedIn. It's actually white papers or data reports, given awareness that, hey, there's this new tech without any promo in it. The second part of it is understand where you fit in the universe. If you are, selling a very complicated, very high touch product that requires them to rip something out, that takes a very different strategy and tactics. Your sales cycle is much longer. So a steady kind of drip of why it's worth the pain of ripping something out and putting this in, right? So each of those are different tactics to a larger strategy. Oftentimes what I see is people look at other marketing and think, me too. Wow, Splunk is doing X. Let's plaster LinkedIn. Let's, hire a PR person and do this.
Right.
There is so much strategy and nuance to really getting an ROI. But fundamentally, your sales, remember, PR and marketing are additive. They are messages. They are messaging the market, messaging investors, and ultimately messaging a future exit. But sales and the fundamentals of the sales cycle and who to get in front of with what message and the product are really the difference maker. Sales and market, or PR and marketing, are accentuators.
Right. So you have to know who you are first, right? And what your value proposition is.
That's right. Absolutely.
So ideally, what is the type of company that you say, this is my perfect fit for Data Tribe? When you're looking at, not only because you're such a unique model where you're investing and helping operate, what's that ideal team, company, market space? What does that look like for you?
That's a great question. Well, our whole team at Data Tribe of, say, 10 very senior people, many of them 3- and 4-time commercial CEOs, CTOs, CMOs, have been, each of us have been doing this 25 years or more. Personality fit is a very important thing. So when move a company in, they'll be with us for 12 months every day.
Right.
Right. And it's about making it an unfair fight. That's what we're built for. However, the 23-year-old Stanford grad is probably not going to be a fit for us because that's a very different culture. And they're most likely not building a cyber or data science company. So making sure we're the right fit for the entrepreneurs. Typically, our founders that we have, some that have, will bring in a 5-time CEO when we have a young technical team that has a breakthrough. Many of ours are first-time founders coming out of the intelligence community. So we surround them with the support and they have high emotional intelligence. But all of them share many things in common. One is The average age of our founders is about 36
Okay.
right now. Two of our founders are females that are both PhDs, and they are kick-ass. But they also have intelligence agency experience, running large teams, running large projects. However, the commercial startup world is something completely different. But they're more settled in their life, they're more prepared. We all have egos, but they have less of an ego as it injects into the company. The fourth important part is we are looking for things that fundamentally change the landscape. In other words, we're not looking for iterative tech. If you come up with just a little better way of doing endpoint security, not only is that so hard, not technologically, but to break through the noise. You have 5 publicly traded endpoint companies. Right? So your odds, unless you are like generationally different, lightweight, cheaper, and your efficacy. So we look for areas that we call over the horizon. If you look at some of our portfolio companies, homomorphic encryption, right? It was a 20-year riddle. It was theoretical. Ellison Ann and her team not only developed it, but deployed it at the NSA. We came out and built the world's first commercial version. If you take a look at Strider, which is the world's first economic espionage SaaS platform, Blackcloak, one of our newest, the world's very first SaaS cybersecurity for the home office for senior executives. Multiple Fortune 500 companies buy it. And this was before COVID, right? Because so much of the work is being done on family networks when they go home from the office. And this was the first company and technology to kind of crack an easily deployable that didn't breach the liability barrier for big company to say, I want to put this on your home network. Can't do that. So we look for things. If you think of Dragos, the very first industrial control cybersecurity platform, right? People said, industrial, IT will take that over. I don't see it. Now it's one of the fastest growing segments. So that's an example of the things we look for that fundamentally nobody is doing, or it's a brand new category. Now there are challenges with that as well, but it does make the PR and marketing a little easier, because we're not stuck with saying, here's the standard chart of the other 7 competitors, and here's our green checkbox as to why we're 10% less calories than them. Really a hard sell, both to CISOs, CIOs, venture. When you can say, no, there is nothing on the market like it. CISOs go, oh, it does what? Right? So that's part of strategy thinking. We'll see over 300 pitches a year. 32% of them come from the Valley. We choose 3 to 4. So it's a very different approach. But that same approach is what founders can really think about as they're fostering ideas on what they can do to really make a go of it.
So if you're speaking directly to the cyber CEOs, the cyber founders who are now ready to create awareness, whether it's for driving business or raising capital, what's one piece of advice you can leave them with as they think through this process and create that strategy and distill that value proposition?
That's a great question. Well, there are several. The first thing I would say is that as a founder, building a successful startup is like a landmine area, right? You're walking through an area that's full of landmines, and there's 2 ways to go through a minefield. One is by braille, which I don't highly recommend. The other is you find a roadmap. A roadmap are mentors, people who are doing it now, who have done it, both successfully and unsuccessfully, and sounding boards. look, just searching the web, there's a wealth of information, but that doesn't give you context as to somebody who said, look, I've had 2 failures and 2 successes. Here's what I wouldn't do. So that's the first part. Get a map, get a
Right.
sounding board, an honest to goodness person who has done it and failed and done it and succeeded. The second part is understand that every startup commercially needs funding to add to its life to get to the point where it is viable for an exit, viable to dominate. So the lifeblood of that is understanding how investors think, how they work, what are the milestones that are needed for them to go, you've shown traction. Oh, now you've shown the ability to scale, right? There are fundamental milestones. The first, let's just talk seed. That is really the belief round. And there are really nowadays two kinds of seeds or 2 stages of seed. The first is what I call just the belief stage. Friends, family, uncle, a rich neighbor who believes in what you're doing. You take 400 or 500K and you start building out. The second part of that is a larger seed, $1.5 million, $2 million. And one can happen, previous, but generally what we see is, 400 or 500K, 300K put in. So the seed stage, it's about showing early viability, right? Too often people coming out of research communities go, here's my white paper, and I've got a lot of patents, and this will disrupt the world. Yeah. That's fundamentally different than let me show you a demo, and here's why these 2 corporations are trialing it, right? That is practical versus research. As they begin to do that, you have to understand you're looking for an A round, where you go from this, what I call by hook or by croil, to professional venture investing. And milestones are basically a series of things. And by the way, venture isn't that innovative, right?
Yeah.
Today, it's about milestones. Does it look, smell, and taste like they used to? Do they believe in the team? You're looking at between 850 and 1.3 million of ARR. Now, you don't have to have it exactly before you go, but you can show the trend. Hey, we're at 720 ARR. By the end of the year, we're going to be at 1.2 million.
Right.
Or we're at 800K, so forth and so on. Then there's the quality customer rating. Do you have 12 gas stations locally, or do you have some Fortune 1000 companies that are using it, right? So there's a quality customer rating. Third is the team, right? And they view it as risk. If every founder and person in the team, this is their first, the risk is very high. But if you're a first-time founder and your head of sales is on his 6th, and your CTO has done 2 others, not an issue, right? Vice versa, if you're a 2-time founder and this is your first time, your CTO's first time, not so bad. So understanding that mix, but really believing in the team. Just because you have a PhD nowadays does not guarantee. In some ways, you have to massage the points to prove to them that, it's not just theoretical. The next part is your moat. Where do you fit? Are you one of 27, in this market? Are you going up against 5 publicly traded companies? How long is that sales cycle? Is it a heavy product? In other words, we have to go in 6 times and present. It takes 1 week of training to use it, and then they can install it. That's a lot of headwinds. A lot of headwinds. So the go-to-market friction, how easy is it bought? Can they buy at a lower price and you upsell, called land and expand? But really, what market do you fit in? Is it, an older market like identity? Is it an older market like intelligence? Is it an endpoint? Or are you something different, a next kind of generation? So how you really couch it should be the same to buyers. The last part I would talk about, they'll look at when you're going for your A round, they're really judging you on your B round. If you take 8 to 10 million and you're at $1 million ARR, what is the likelihood you're going to hit B round milestones, which is 5 million ARR? If you're going out for your A round, and we see this all the time, we have 120K in revenue with one customer. It's going to take another year to build out the other features. And we want a 20 million pre. You've already ruined going out with that, because investors are like, well, let me explain to you how it works, right? So going all the way back to number one, get a map, get a mentor, understand the milestones. But venture at your A round is judging, are they going to get the milestones to be? Again, risk, right? So sales volume, your pipeline, the sales cycle, the team, all of those. If we write an $8 million check, what is the likelihood they're going to go from $1 million ARR to 5 million ARR in 18 to 24 months?
Yeah.
So you kind of reverse engineer it, and the messaging is the same.
Right.
And I spend so much of my time actually talking about this to founders, right? It's not just, hey, we have X on and we have 500K in revenue. Great. That's a great first step. But understand the evolution of it.
Right. No, well, listen, I really appreciate your insights. This has been hugely valuable. I'm sure our audience is going to enjoy hearing your thoughts and your guidance. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ermis. I appreciate it.